Next in our RBC series, we are diving into the Thalassemia Syndromes. This is a quantitative assembly line crisis. Look at our core concept right in the center. Normal quality, but disastrous quantity. Let's compare the two sides on the screen. On the left half, we have a normal hemoglobin production. You get balanced alpha and beta globin synthesis, a perfect 1-to-1 ratio, which leads to a full tetramer assembly, optimal oxygen transport capacity, and healthy erythropoiesis. But look at the right half. When the critical quantitative crisis hits, we enter the thalassemia syndromes. You get reduced or completely absent synthesis of alpha or beta genes. This leads to imbalanced globin chains, a quantitative defect. The result? Ineffective erythropoiesis and hemolysis, which causes severe anemia and tissue hypoxia. Let's look at a clinical presentation. This is the unexplained microcytosis. Our patient is Rahul, a 24-year-old male. His presentation? He is a medical student presenting with asymptomatic fatigue. We run the labs. His hemoglobin is 10.5 gram per deciliter, so our assessment is that he is mildly anemic. His MCV is 62 femtoliter, meaning he is severely microcytic. But look at his RBC count. It is 6.2 million per microliter. Our assessment? It is paradoxically elevated. To make matters worse, his iron profile, ferritin and serum iron, is completely normal. This is the diagnostic trap. Look at the visual at the bottom, comparing his tiny microcytic RBC of 62 femtoliter to a normal RBC. If his iron is perfectly normal, why his cells are so small? We find the answer in pathogenesis. The broken assembly line. Look at the normal state. You need a 1-to-1 balance. You take 2 alpha chains, which we can think of as the car chassis, and 2 beta chains, the wheels. Put them together and you get a healthy HbA tetramer. But look at the thalassemia bottleneck. If the beta department is halted, the alpha department is still printing at maximum speed. As the slide says, the structure is fine, the balance is broken. Excess unpaired chains become toxic intracellular debris. So what happens to these cells full of toxic debris? Look at the fate of the unbalanced erythrocyte. It happens in 2 steps. Step 1 is ineffective erythropoiesis resulting in apoptosis. The location? The bone marrow. Defective erythroblasts are destroyed before they can exit the bone marrow space. Step 2 is extravascular hemolysis, featuring fragmentation and macrophage activity. The location? The spleen. The few damaged cells that actually escape are immediately shredded in the splenic red pulp. As our quote at the bottom says, not perfectly balanced, like all things shouldn't be. Now let's classify the 2 main branches, starting with branch 1, alpha thalassemia genetics. You must memorize these facts. The mechanism is gene deletions. The locus is on chromosome 16, and the baseline is that you have 4 total genes coding for alpha chains. Read the golden rule at the bottom. Clinical severity depends entirely on the sheer number of genes wiped out. Let's look at the spectrum of those deletions. Follow the table with me. The alpha deletion severity spectrum. If 1 gene is deleted, you are a silent carrier. Normal labs, 0 anemia and asymptomatic. If 2 genes are deleted, you have alpha thalassemia trait. You have normal HbA but minimal microcytosis. This is highly tested because it is often confused with iron deficiency anemia. If 3 genes are deleted, you have HBH disease. This causes severe hemolysis and splenomegaly. Because of the missing alphas, the excess beta forms beta-4 tetramers. If 4 genes are deleted, this is hydrops fetalis, a total alpha wipeout. The excess gamma forms gamma-4, also known as hemoglobin BARTs. This sadly results in intrauterine death. Let's zoom in on that 3-gene deletion. The 3-gene wipeout, HBH and the golf balls. The pathology here is desperation tetramers. With no alpha chains, the excess beta chains clump together into unstable beta-4, which is hemoglobin H. When stained, these look like golf balls inside the cell. And the specific stain required to see this? Brilliant crescile blue. Look at the picture. And what about this 4-gene deletion? This is the 4-gene wipeout, the hydrops fetalis crisis. Let's look at the fetal response. With a total alpha chain wipeout, the fetus makes desperation gamma-4 tetramers known as hemoglobin BARTs. This triggers the hypoxia crisis. Why? Because HB BARTs has an absurdly high oxygen affinity. Look at the oxygen dissociation curve on the screen. It is aggressively shifted. It completely refuses to release oxygen to developing fetal tissues. The result is catastrophic tissue hypoxia, leading to massive generalized fluid overload and ultimately intrauterine death. Now we switch to branch 2, beta thalassemia genetics. Contrast this with alpha. The mechanism here is point mutations, typically at the promoter or splice sites. The locus is on chromosome 11. Look at the classification scheme on the board. Beta represents the normal wild-type gene. Beta plus means it is partially mutated, resulting in decreased beta chain production. Beta 0 means it is completely dead, meaning zero beta chain production. Back to our medical student patient. Here is Rahul's diagnosis and the Menser cheat code. To solve the microcytosis trap, take the MCV and divide it by the RBC count. If the number is greater than 13, the factory lacks raw materials, that is iron deficiency anemia. If the number is less than 13, the factory has materials, but there is a genetic bottleneck, that is thalassemia trait. Let's do Rahul's math. An MCV of 62 divided by an RBC count of 6.2 equals 10. The diagnosis is beta thalassemia minor. To prove it, we order a confirmatory lab. A hemoglobin electrophoresis will show an increase in HbA2 to greater than 3.5%. But what if both beta genes are completely mutated? This brings us to our next clinical dossier, beta thalassemia major. The 6-month switch, also known as Cooley's anemia. Look at the graph. The infant is protected in the womb by fetal hemoglobin. But when the body tries to switch to adult hemoglobin at 6 months of age, the beta department goes completely dark. Look at the chart on your screen. Gamma drops, beta fails to rise, and we enter the death gap. What happens during this gap? Look at the catastrophic complications. Because of the severe anemia, the kidneys scream for blood. This triggers a massive erythropoietin or EPO release. That EPO forces the bone marrow into overdrive and forces the body into extramedullary hematopoiesis. Because the marrow in the skull expands so aggressively, you get the classic hair on the end or crew cut appearance on X-ray, as well as the classic chipmunk faces. This is a very important diagnostic clue. To save the child, we must transfuse blood, but this leads to the transfusion paradox and iron overload. Lifelong blood transfusions keep the child alive, but the body cannot excrete the massive influx of excess iron. The result is secondary hemochromatosis. The iron deposits everywhere. In the heart, it causes arrhythmias and heart failure. In the pancreas, it causes bronze diabetes. In the liver, it causes cirrhosis. The fix for this overload is the lifelong iron chelation therapy using drugs like deferasirox or desferrioxamine. Let's wrap up beta thalassemia with the diagnostic master table for electrophoresis. In a normal adult, you have roughly 97% HbA, 2.5% HbA2, and less than 1% HbF. In beta thalassemia minor, HbA is decreased to about 90%. Crucially, HbA2 is increased to greater than 3.5%, and HbF is a normal or slight increase. But in beta thalassemia major, HbA is completely gone at 0%. Because of this, HbF can be massively increased, often acting as the primary hemoglobin alongside a variable or increased HbA2. And with that, the assembly line is understood. We know the quantitative crisis. But what about chemical warfare? What happens when oxidative stress destroys the red blood cell from the inside out? In our next part, we will tackle G6PD deficiency and bite cells.